Claire had never been one to believe in destiny or fate. Growing up in a series of foster homes, she had learned to trust only herself, her camera, and the fleeting beauty of the world she captured through its lens. Photography was her escape, the one constant in a life of instability and chaos. But despite her guarded heart, life had a way of surprising her, especially the day she met Jhon. Jhon was everything Claire wasn't. He was confident, warm, and had a natural way of lighting up any room he entered. An architect with a passion for designing spaces that people could call home, Jhon had a heart full of dreams, the most prominent being his belief in love. Claire had always kept her distance from people like him, too afraid to let anyone in, but Jhon was different. From the moment they met at a local art exhibit, where Claire's photographs were on display, she felt an undeniable connection. They started seeing each other more often, shared coffee dates, walks along the coast, and spontaneous weekend getaways where Jhon showed Claire the world through his eyes. It didn't take long for Claire's walls to come crumbling down. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she didn't have to be alone, a life where love was real and attainable. But everything came to a halt on a fateful day. After spending a beautiful afternoon by the beach, capturing the waves crashing against the shore, they were driving back home when tragedy struck. Their car was hit by another vehicle, sending it spiraling off the road. Claire woke up in the hospital with only minor injuries, but the worst news of her life awaited her. Jhon hadn't survived. The shock, the pain, and the overwhelming sense of loss hit Claire like a tidal wave. Jhon, the man who had given her hope, was gone in an instant. She couldn't fathom a life without him. The grief was suffocating, consuming every part of her. She stopped taking photos, stopped seeing her friends, and withdrew into herself. Nothing mattered anymore because the one person who had made her feel alive was no longer there. Claire struggled through the days following Jhon's death in a fog of numbness and disbelief. Everyone around her, friends, acquaintances, and even strangers, offered their condolences, but nothing they said could fill the emptiness that Jhon's absence left behind. She felt like a part of her had been ripped away. A month passed, and one evening, Claire found herself wandering back to the beach where they had spent so much time together. The sunset was breathtaking, the sky painted in hues of orange, pink, and gold, but it felt hollow without Jhon by her side. She sat in the sand, staring at the waves, lost in her thoughts. That's when the first sign appeared. It was subtle at first, a gentle breeze that tousled her hair, and the faint scent of Jhon's cologne in the air. She hadn't brought it with her. It wasn't possible. Claire's heart skipped a beat. Could it be her imagination? She tried to brush it off as a trick of her grieving mind, but the sensation was too real to ignore. The next few days brought more signs. Every night, when Claire went to bed, she felt a comforting warmth envelop her, almost as if someone was there beside her. She woke up in the middle of the night to find her bedroom light flickering, though no one had touched the switch. Her favorite photo of Jhon and her, taken during their first trip together, suddenly appeared on her desk, though she was certain she had packed it away after his death. The most vivid sign came one evening while Claire was editing old photos on her laptop. A notification popped up. A song was playing on her playlist. It was Jhon's favorite song, the one they had danced to on their last night together. Claire hadn't listened to it since he died. Tears filled her eyes as the melody washed over her, and she whispered, "Jhon, are you still here?" The signs became more frequent, and Claire couldn't deny what was happening any longer. She started to believe that Jhon was trying to reach out to her, to let her know he was still with her in some way. But how? How could someone who was gone still make their presence felt? As Claire's grief deepened, the signs from Jhon grew stronger. She began having vivid dreams where they were together, walking through familiar places, parks, beaches, and city streets they used to visit. In these dreams, Jhon was as real as he had been in life. His touch was warm, his laughter infectious, and his voice soft and reassuring. At first, the dreams brought Claire comfort. They felt like a lifeline, a way to stay connected to Jhon. Each night, she would fall asleep hoping to see him again, longing for the moments where they could talk, laugh, and be together. even if it was only in her mind. But the dreams started to change. In one dream, Jhon seemed different. He wasn't just there for comfort anymore. He had something to say. They were sitting by a lake, and Jhon turned to Claire, his expression more serious than usual. "Claire, I'm still here," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "But I can't stay much longer." Claire's heart pounded. "What do you mean? I don't want you to go." "I'm in between," Jhon explained. "I haven't moved on because you're not ready to let go. But it's time, Claire. I need you to live your life, to keep moving forward. I'll always be with you, but you need to let me go." Claire woke up in tears. How could she let go? How could she move on when Jhon was the only person who had ever made her feel truly alive? The thought of losing him all over again was unbearable. But as the days went by, the dreams continued, and Jhon's message remained the same. He told her that their love wasn't over, that it would never die, but that it was time for her to start living again. He urged her to pick up her camera, to return to the passion that had once brought her so much joy. "You have a gift, Claire," he said in one dream. "You see the world in a way no one else does. Don't let that go." Days turned into weeks, and Claire's dreams of Jhon became more frequent and intense. Each time she saw him, there was a deep yearning in his eyes. He was still the Jhon she had fallen in love with, but something had changed. It was as if he was caught between two worlds, the one he shared with her and another place beyond her reach. One night, Claire had a dream that felt more real than any of the others. Claire found herself standing in a field surrounded by endless rows of tall grass swaying in the breeze. The sky was a soft lavender, the air heavy with the scent of wildflowers. In the distance, she saw Jhon standing with his back to her, gazing at the horizon. She called out his name, her voice catching in her throat as she rushed toward him. He turned slowly, his face illuminated by the ethereal light of the setting sun. "Jhon." Claire's voice trembled. She reached out, her fingertips barely brushing his arm. He smiled softly, the warmth in his eyes bittersweet. "Claire, you've come." "I don't understand," she whispered, taking in the peaceful but strange world around them. "Where are we?" "This is the in-between," Jhon said, his voice tinged with sadness. "It's the place between life and the afterlife. I've been waiting here for you." Claire's heart pounded. "Waiting for me? Why?" Jhon gently cupped her face with his hands, the touch so familiar and comforting. "Because you haven't let go. I can't move forward until you're ready to live again." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes. "I don't want to let go. I don't know how. I can't bear the thought of losing you again." "I'll never be truly gone," Jhon said softly. "But you need to live, Claire. You can't stay trapped in the past. I'll always be a part of you, but you have to open yourself to the future." The pain in Claire's chest was overwhelming, but she knew deep down that Jhon was right. As much as it hurt to think of a life without him, she couldn't keep living in this state of limbo. The love they shared was real, but it wasn't enough to hold on to forever. "What if I forget you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jhon smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You won't. Our love is beyond time, beyond life. You'll remember me in every sunset, every smile, every moment of joy. But you have to keep living." Claire nodded, though the ache in her heart remained. She wanted to hold on to him forever, but the reality was clear. Jhon couldn't stay with her, not like this. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too, Claire. Always." With those words, the dream began to fade, and Claire felt herself pulled back into the real world. When she woke, she felt an odd sense of peace. Jhon was still gone, but for the first time, she felt like she could carry on. She still had her grief, but now she had something else too, a sense of purpose. The next morning, Claire woke up with a strange sense of clarity. The weight that had pressed down on her for months seemed lighter, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the faintest glimmer of hope. She found herself drawn to her camera, which had been collecting dust on a shelf since Jhon's death. It felt foreign in her hands, yet familiar. She walked to the window, raised the camera, and focused on the morning light streaming through the trees. The world outside had moved on, but for Claire, everything still felt frozen. Yet now, in her hands, she held a way to thaw that frozen heart. Photography had always been her escape, her way of making sense of the chaos in her life. Jhon had been the only one who truly understood that part of her. As Claire snapped a few photos of the trees and the sky, she remembered his words from the dream. "You have a gift, Claire. Don't let it go." The next few days, Claire found herself venturing out more. She took her camera with her, visiting the places she and Jhon had once shared. The park where they'd had their first kiss, the cafe where they'd spent hours talking about their dreams, the beach where he had whispered his love for her. It was bittersweet, but with each visit, the memories felt less like weights dragging her down and more like gentle reminders of the beauty they had shared. One afternoon, as she was walking along the boardwalk by the beach, something caught her eye. A couple, sitting on a bench, holding hands. The way they looked at each other reminded her so much of how Jhon used to look at her. Without thinking, Claire raised her camera and captured the moment. When she lowered the camera, she realized something. She was ready to start living again. Claire's journey toward healing wasn't a straight path, but with each passing day, she found herself opening up to the idea that life could go on, even without Jhon physically by her side. She threw herself back into her photography, taking on small projects and gradually working her way back to the career she had once put on hold. One evening, Claire was invited to an art gallery opening by an old friend. Hesitant at first, she finally agreed, thinking it would be good to reconnect with the art world she had once been so passionate about. As she wandered through the gallery, admiring the photographs and paintings, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Turning, she saw a familiar face, Michael, a friend of Jhon's whom she hadn't seen since the funeral. "Claire," Michael said, his smile warm. "It's so good to see you. How have you been?" She hesitated, then gave a small smile. "I'm doing better." They talked for a while, reminiscing about Jhon and catching up on what had happened in their lives since. Michael had always been supportive, and their conversation felt like a small piece of closure for Claire. As they talked, Claire noticed a photograph on the wall across the room. It was of a sunrise over the ocean, simple, yet breathtaking. She felt a pull toward it, something familiar in the composition. "Do you like it?" Michael asked, noticing her gaze. "It's beautiful," Claire whispered. "It was Jhon's favorite spot to watch the sunrise," Michael said quietly. "He always wanted to bring you here." Claire's heart skipped a beat. The photograph felt like another sign, a reminder that even though Jhon was gone, he was still with her in ways she couldn't always see. By the end of the evening, Claire had made a decision. She couldn't stay stuck in the past, but she also couldn't pretend that what she and Jhon had shared wasn't real. Moving forward didn't mean forgetting. It meant carrying his memory with her as she built a new life. And that's exactly what she intended to do. The days after the gallery event felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from Claire's chest. The world, which had once felt so dull and distant, now had color again. She spent her mornings with her camera, capturing life as it happened around her. Street vendors, children playing, lovers sharing stolen moments in the park. But it was during these quiet moments that Claire realized something. She wasn't just documenting life anymore. She was starting to live it. One afternoon, while she was editing her latest batch of photos, she received an unexpected call from a photography magazine. The editor had seen her work from the gallery and wanted to feature a series on grief and healing, showcasing the very photos Claire had been taking since Jhon's death. It was a huge opportunity, one that Claire would have once jumped at. But this time, she hesitated. The idea of exposing her personal grief to the world made her nervous. What if people didn't understand? What if they misinterpreted her pain? She thought back to Jhon's encouragement, the way he had always pushed her to believe in her art. "You have a gift, Claire. Don't hide it." Taking a deep breath, Claire accepted the offer. This wasn't just about the photos anymore. It was about her journey. It was about healing. The feature in the magazine was a hit. People connected deeply with Claire's photos. and soon she was receiving invitations to speak at events and contribute to other projects. She was doing what she loved again, and it felt right. But there was still something missing, a piece of her that hadn't fully healed. One evening, after a photography exhibit, Claire found herself walking alone along the pier, the night air cool against her skin. The waves crashed gently against the shore, and the moonlight reflected off the water in a way that felt almost magical. As she stared out at the horizon, lost in thought, a voice behind her broke the silence. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Claire turned and saw Michael, the same friend of Jhon's she had reconnected with at the gallery. He gave her a soft smile, his eyes warm and understanding. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, gesturing to the empty space beside her. "Not at all," Claire replied, grateful for the company. They stood in silence for a moment, both of them watching the waves roll in. It was peaceful, and Claire found comfort in knowing that Michael, too, carried a piece of Jhon with him. They talked for hours, sharing memories of Jhon, their hopes for the future, and the small, everyday things that had helped them cope with their grief. As the night went on, Claire realized that talking to Michael didn't bring the sharp, aching pain she had once felt when speaking about Jhon. Instead, it felt like closure, a way of honoring his memory without being trapped by it. The next few months were a whirlwind for Claire. Her photography career was taking off in ways she had never imagined, and she found herself traveling for exhibits, interviews, and projects. But through it all, she made sure to take time for herself, to reflect, to heal, and to remember that Jhon would always be a part of her, even as she moved forward. Michael had become a constant presence in her life as well. They spent more and more time together, their connection deepening with each passing day. It wasn't romantic, at least not at first, but there was something about Michael's steady presence that made Claire feel like she wasn't alone in her grief. One evening, after a long day of shooting, Michael invited Claire to dinner. They laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of each other's company. As the night came to a close, Michael reached across the table and took Claire's hand. "You know," he said softly, "Jhon would want you to be happy. He wouldn't want you to stop living because of him." Claire looked down at their intertwined hands, her heart beating faster. "I know," she whispered, "but moving on feels complicated." "It doesn't have to be," Michael said, his eyes full of understanding. "You're allowed to find happiness again, Claire. It doesn't mean you're forgetting him. It just means you're still alive." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. For the first time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, there was room in her heart for more than just grief. Weeks passed, and Claire found herself thinking more and more about Michael. He had been her rock, her steady source of comfort when everything else felt uncertain. And though it scared her to admit it, she knew there was something more between them, something that went beyond friendship. One evening, as they walked along the beach where Jhon had once taken her, Claire turned to Michael and took a deep breath. "I think I'm ready." Michael stopped and looked at her, his expression tender. "Ready for what?" "To move forward, to let myself feel something again." Michael's eyes softened, and he took her hand in his. "You don't have to rush, Claire. I'll be here, no matter what." But Claire shook her head. "It's not about rushing. It's about knowing that Jhon will always be with me. But that doesn't mean I have to stop living. I think he'd want me to be happy. And I think I could be happy with you." Michael's smile was gentle, but full of emotion. He pulled Claire into a hug, holding her tightly. "I think he'd be proud of you." As the months went on, Claire and Michael's relationship deepened. It wasn't without its challenges. There were moments where Claire felt guilty for finding happiness again, and times when the memories of Jhon felt too close. But Michael was patient, always reminding her that it was okay to carry Jhon with her, while also making space for something new. They took things slow, allowing their connection to grow naturally. And with each passing day, Claire felt more at peace with her past, her present, and her future. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Michael turned to Claire with a small smile. "You know, I never thought I'd find someone like you." Claire looked at him, her heart full. I never thought I'd be able to love again." Michael squeezed her hand gently. "It's not about forgetting the past. It's about learning to live with it and making room for what comes next." Claire smiled, leaning her head on Michael's shoulder. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly content. The love she had shared with Jhon would always be a part of her, but now she was ready to embrace the love she had found in the present. As time went on, Claire's photography continued to flourish, and she and Michael built a life together. They supported each other through their grief, but also celebrated the new life they were creating. They knew that Jhon would always be a part of their story, but it was a story that had room for more than just loss. On the anniversary of Jhon's death, Claire and Michael visited his favorite spot, the beach where they had once watched the sunrise together. As the sun rose over the horizon, Claire felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had loved deeply, and she had lost. But she had also found a new love, and with it, a new chapter of her life. And in that moment, she knew that Jhon's love had never truly left her. It had simply made room for her to love again. Claire stood on the shoreline, the cool breeze ruffling her hair as she watched the golden hues of the setting sun melt into the ocean. The same beach where she had shared so many intimate moments with Jhon now carried new memories, moments that belonged to her and Michael. Time had softened the ache in her heart, but she knew that both Jhon and Michael were deeply woven into the fabric of her life. One had shaped her soul, while the other was healing it. Michael joined her, slipping his hand into hers without a word. They stood in silence for a while, the crash of the waves filling the quiet space between them. It was a comfortable silence, one that didn't need filling with words. It was here, at the beach that once belonged to her and Jhon, that she found herself reflecting on how far she had come. "I still think about him," Claire whispered, her voice soft but steady. "I wonder what life would have been like if he were still here." Michael nodded, his thumb brushing gently over her hand. "I do too, sometimes. But I also know that he'd want you to be happy, to live fully." Claire sighed, the weight of that truth settling into her chest. She turned to face Michael, her heart full of gratitude for the man standing beside her. "I think that's what he taught me in the end, to live, to keep going, even when it hurts." Michael smiled softly, his eyes filled with affection. "You've come a long way, Claire, and I'm honored to be part of your journey." Claire's heart swelled with emotion. Michael had been patient, understanding, and gentle with her grief. He had allowed her to honor Jhon's memory while building something new and beautiful between them. She realized then that love wasn't about replacing someone. It was about creating new spaces in your heart for the people who mattered. As the sun sank lower, casting a warm glow over them, Claire spoke again. "I love you, Michael, and I loved Jhon, too. I think it's possible to love both, without guilt or fear." Michael's hand tightened around hers. "I've always known that, Claire. I love you because of everything you've been through, everything you are. Your love for Jhon is part of what makes you who you are." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes, but they were tears of release. She had carried the weight of grief for so long, afraid that moving on meant leaving Jhon behind. But now, she understood that love could evolve, expand, and make room for more. "I think he'd be happy for us," Claire said, smiling through her tears, "for the life we're building." Michael kissed her softly, his lips a gentle promise of their future together. "He'd be proud of you, Claire." A year later, Claire stood in a gallery, surrounded by her newest collection of photographs. The theme was love, not just romantic love, but love in all its forms. The love of family, of friends, of memories that never truly leave us. Each photograph told a story of connection, of loss, and of hope. And at the center of it all was the understanding that love, once given, never dies. Michael stood beside her, his arm wrapped around her waist. The gallery was filled with people admiring her work, but in that moment, it was just the two of them. He leaned in, whispering in her ear, "You've created something truly beautiful here." Claire smiled, her heart full. "It's because I finally understand what love is. It's not about holding on too tightly, It's about letting go and trusting that the love you've given and received will always stay with you, even as life moves forward. As the evening went on, Claire found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. Losing Jhon had nearly broken her, but in the process of healing, she had found new love, new purpose, and a deeper understanding of herself. She had learned that love doesn't have to end with loss. It transforms, takes on new shapes, and makes room for new beginnings. And in that, she had found peace. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more delightful stories.